My name is Maninder Vora, and I'm going to speak to you about future of medicine. I am a PhD in bioengineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and I started my career in biotechnology in the 80s, in the 1980s, and have been in this field for about 40 years, and I've interacted with the best minds in this field, academics, industry folks, as well as regulatory folks. And what I've learned over throughout this career is that the opportunity in this field is enormous. And because I started on the ground floor, I have seen when people were double guessing this technology. They were thinking that this technology of producing medicines from bacteria, from bacterial sources recombinantly, may not be safe, may not be even safe to work with, and maybe not safe when injected into patients, and may not work as the hypothesis went. And all of those things have not come true, as they are safe to work with, and they have been shown to be safe in humans and effective. So biotechnology is the science of making medicines using bacteria or mammalian cells to grow into, and you clone the DNA and produce those medicines in the bacteria, and then you purify it. And when I was going into the field of biomedicine, people warned me, this is not a pure field, this is not biology, this is not engineering, why are you wasting your time? And I defied them. Some of them were my teachers who thought I should go into a pure science field. In any case, I ended up where I am. And I'm going to discuss the field of medicine and its emerging trends. And I have divided this topic into two focus areas. The first focus area is the medicines themselves, and then I'll come to digital health. So talking about medicines, from the medieval times, the medicines were actually called potions back then, because they were a concoction of extracts from plants and spices and such things. And there's no reproducibility about them, and it was a black box. But the real medicines started coming from the early 1900s. When the extracts from plants, from animals, like porcine insulin, the pig insulin is actually very homologous or very similar to human insulin. So porcine insulin was the first insulin that was given to patients. And even human extracts, like human plasma during the World War II. So those then were followed by a very significant discovery of penicillins. The penicillins were first derived from bacterial sources, and they eradicated they eradicated the bacterial infection so effectively and saved so many lives, and have been saving since then those lives. After that, the vaccines were discovered, and these vaccines were then derived from killed bacteria or inactivated bacteria or viruses, and then they were purified and given to patients, to subjects, thus eradicating smallpox and some other diseases. Then came the advances in chemical synthesis, and these molecules were synthesized, pure molecules were synthesized, such as aspirin, such as ibuprofen, such as the chemotherapeutic drugs. these were all synthesized and purified. Now these are single entities, so they're much purer, easy to characterize, and also cleanly manufactured. Then there was a little bit of a pause, I'd say about 30 years. Then in the 1980s, the area of biomedicines, which is near and dear to my heart, of recombinant biotechnology came into being. And these molecules revolutionized the field of medicine, because these medicines are produced from cells. So no one had tried to do this at the time. And these bacterial cells or mammalian cells produce these medicines in quantities that were very small at the time. To tell you the enormity of where we were and where we have come today is that in 1982, there was not a single medicine from biotechnology that was on the market. In 1985 was the first time that human insulin was introduced from recombinant technology. Today, there are 540 medicines that are on the market, and 55% of these medicines were actually, they came to the market in the last 9 years. So that tells you that the early phase of research was the foundational phase, and then now it has come to a place where now most of the medicines that are coming that are from biotechnology. This was followed by vaccines that came from biotechnology, because the same technique was used. Now it was then replaced by the field of, or augmented, I should say, by the field of monoclonal antibodies. Monoclonal antibodies are proteins that are similar to what the body does when an invading organism enters the bloodstream. These antibodies then bind to the receptors in your body and destroy the invading mechanism. And so this field, antibody field, is an enormous field now, and it will continue to grow in the future also. This was then added to by antibody drug conjugates. So what we did in that is that we take a drug that is normally toxic to tumor cells, but if it's given by itself, it not just kills tumor cells, but also kills normal cells. So what we did was we conjugate them to antibodies that target this conjugate to the tumor site. And at that point, then the drug is released and it acts in the vicinity of the tumor, thus killing the tumor. And the toxicity of the drug is not felt by normal organs. So this field is also another field that will continue to grow. And then we have seen the advent of cells as drugs. So these cells, what are these cells? These cells are cells that are actually taken out of the patient's own blood. Then they are engineered in the test tube, or so to speak, and then they are expanded, purified, and then go back into the patient. And this has become, one of the hottest fields in medicine. The issue here is what we call as the needle to needle time. So the first needle that takes out blood from you, from the patient, and the last needle that reinfuses the cells that we have expanded. And so this time could be from weeks to months. So one of the new and emerging fields is called off-the-shelf cell therapy. And these cell therapies actually take blood from donors, and they are engineered, and they produce cells that are already activated and purified and available at the time when the patient needs it, where he or she needs it. So this field is a very expanding field, and it's within the field of personalized medicine. And no medicine discussion would be complete without talking about the DNA-based vaccines. And we all felt the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic when we had to develop, the industry had to develop, in collaboration with academia as well as regulatory agencies, had to develop the vaccines to eradicate or to control this pandemic. There were 600 million cases of COVID-19 diagnosed, and 6.3 million people or 6.6 million people died of this pandemic. So, the effectiveness of these vaccines was so good, and it was so predominant that in 2 years, 13 billion doses of these vaccines were given. And now, COVID-19 is a distant memory, which tells you the power of biomedicine. Another field that now I'm going to focus on is digital health. And digital health is a catch-all for a number of things, which includes the application of artificial intelligence, machine learning on the discovery and diagnosis of diseases, and as well as telemedicine, remote monitoring, wearable devices. So let me first talk about artificial intelligence, AI. Artificial intelligence is useful for cases where there's lots of data and it's too difficult to assimilate all the data and come out with these conclusions, especially on the spot. And so what we are looking for in here from AI is that if we access all the medical records, all the diagnosis that the patient has undergone, like x-rays, like scans, etc., then can the doctor on the spot come up with an intervention that is likely to work in the patient. So this is something that people are working on. In the drug industry, people are working on trying to differentiate between normal cells and normal proteins versus dysfunctional cells and dysfunctional proteins. So, there are 30 trillion cells in a human body, and they produce 100,000 proteins. And these proteins come in all shapes and sizes, and the shape and the size of the protein determines what its function is going to be. And if there is a manufacturing issue by the body is a big manufacturing facility. And, like any other manufacturing plant, they make some bad copies. And those bad copies may have a small difference from those of those good copies. And those dysfunctional cells lead to a dysfunction and a disease. And so by machine learning techniques, we would be looking at, institutions are already looking at the pattern of, how many of these dysfunctions occur or what prevalence. And based on that, then we'll be designing interventions. And this field is a hot field right now, and it's likely to continue to be hot and continue to bring to patients interventions that would be meaningful to improve their lives. The next topic that I think that I want to cover is of clinical trial design. So all the medicines are first evaluated in the clinical trial scenarios, and those clinical trial, the biggest issue with them is how to design a clinical trial, how to choose the right patients who can benefit from the disease prevention or disease eradication that we are attempting, and how do you get those patients? So again, AI and machine learning tools are being used to seek out those centers which have a preponderance of patients with a certain disease, which are available at a certain time of the year. And all those things are leading us to design trials where we can enroll those patients that are likely to benefit from our intervention in a quick time, thus reducing the time and cost of a drug development. Another issue is the diversity of patients. When the drug is already on the market, then we are treating a diverse array of patients, diverse in geography, diverse in racial makeup, age, etc. And what you do not want is a drug to work only in a subsection of the population. So by AI and machine learning tools, companies are already looking at centers that have diverse patient pool that they can test the drug into, and thus reducing the time and also effectiveness of the drug. Let me touch on the issue of telemedicine. Now, telemedicine is a field of medicine that is definitely growing, faster than any other hospital, a caregiving field. And telemedicine has already been used, especially in the COVID pandemic days, when they had patients which had a milder case of COVID-19, but had other underlying diseases. So they were monitored, by virtual means, and this is likely to continue. And one other thing that I would like to mention before I, close, is that one last thing I wanted to say was that in this talk, I've touched upon a number of areas, and I am confident and also hopeful that many of these ideas, concepts, medicines would materialize during my lifetime, and I hope that more will materialize in the lifetime of our next generations. Thank you.
If you want to talk about anything at all, then you know who to call. Just tell Sanjana. Tell Sanjana, tell Sanjana, tell Sanjana, just tell Sanjana.